A new documentary about the late food critic and celebrity chef Anthony Bourdain opens this Friday, but the film already has negative buzz around its release. Filmmaker Morgan Neville used artificial intelligence to create 3 sound bites using Bourdain's voice, something that Neville said was approved by Bourdain's widow and by his literary agent.
But that's now in dispute. Otavia Bourdain claims the director did not get such approval, and critics are questioning the ethics of using the AI tech in the film.
This is really interesting, and I think it's bigger than Anthony Bourdain because it's going to continue to become an issue as these things come up. Now, I'm going to read a section from the New Yorker's article on this. They say, Bourdain composed the words. He just, to the best of our knowledge, never uttered them aloud. Some of Neville's critics contend that Bourdain should have the right to control the way his written words are delivered. But doesn't a person relinquish that control anytime his writing goes out into the world? The act of reading, whether an email or a novel in our heads or aloud, always involves some degree of interpretation. Is this much different than, let's say, is this much different than Tupac being rolled out at Coachella and people being completely flabbergasted? And I think some people were so deeply offended by that because you have this tech artificially interpreting beloved icons of American culture, and it's just very jarring.
I think people are probably more nervous about the technology than its particular application. In this case, I'm listening right now to the Ghislaine Maxwell, Vicky Ward podcast, and Vicky Ward had recorded a ton of interviews with Jeffrey Epstein 20 years ago. She transcribed them. Either she no longer has the tapes, or the tapes are not good enough to play. I just presume that she doesn't have the tapes anymore. And so they have basically an actor reenact Jeffrey Epstein's voice, and there's been no complaint about that.
Right.
So what is it exactly about the computer enhanced voice that makes it so much different? And I think it goes back to our unease with this technology.
And it's also, I think, in Bourdain's case, the exploitation of what would be his property, his voice and other applications then being applied to this particular one. And I think it makes people nervous about how technology may, at the time that we submitted to having our voices recorded, is going to be very different than, let's say, in Bourdain's case, 2021, when he may have uttered these words. It just, when he started getting into the television industry, it's just all very different. And does that mean we lose our agency when we die? Does that mean that so much of the intellectual property, so much of the things that we do, which are now imprinted into the cloud indefinitely, and so, we pass by security cameras, every inch that we walk in public and often in private. Are we relinquishing so much agency to these tech companies, to big business in general, that will be used without our permission in ways that we may not have agreed with? We'll never know when we're gone.
Yes, we are. We are. And we're certainly relinquishing all sorts of control over the future by simply by deputizing AI to take on such a significant role in our lives. And if you talk to experts in the AI world, there's a pretty strong consensus that it is at some point, it's just a question of when, going to go horribly, terribly wrong.
Yeah.
It's like one of the things that just doesn't get talked about much in the news media. The not just the risks of AI-driven catastrophes, but the near certainty of them.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with that. It is the near certainty of it, and Kanye West learned that the hard way when he created a hologram of Kim Kardashian's late father, Robert Kardashian, for her birthday, or maybe it was an anniversary one year, and they played this footage on Keeping Up with the Kardashians, which Ryan does ardently. He's constantly talking to me about what the Kardashians are doing.
Love it.
And I have to say, Ryan, I don't have time to watch the Kardashians.
Got to make time for it.
But as they play the footage on the Kardashians, and it's so jarring. It's similar to the Tupac thing, and I think it's similar to the Bourdain thing, where it's like, this is not the real thing. No matter what, it is not. You're never going to nail it. We're never going to be seeing Robert Kardashian speak to his daughter about things happening in 2020 from the dead. You can't do it. You simply can't do it. And so when you're splicing together words that Bourdain uttered in other contexts with intonation injected into them in other contexts, it's deeply creepy. But is it also exploitive?
Well, it goes to, I think, the fact that there is something deep within people and within human beings that recognizes that there is something profoundly off about artificial intelligence. And it's something that isn't recognized, isn't talked about, isn't verbalized and articulated in the same way that we do all feel it, though. And it expresses itself through these things like revulsion at Tupac or disquiet at Anthony Bourdain's voice.
Yeah, and it does, to your point, I mean, this is not a genie that can be put back in the bottle. We are years into this. We are in the panopticon, no matter how you want to think of it.
There's still some things that could be done to, like, at least mitigate some of the risks.
Absolutely, there's no question about it. And there are ways that you can live your life. It's enormously difficult at this point. There are ways that you can live your life to avoid some of this and to mitigate some of this, absolutely. But we have lost so much agency already. It happened so quickly. It happened, it's sort of like the metaphor of the boiling frog. And here we are increasingly aware. I think stories like this one, and the reason that I think we wanted to talk about it is because it's one of those boiling frog moments. It's one of those times when you get this glimpse of awareness at how quickly life has changed, how quickly technology has changed, and how deeply we are being exploited without even noticing it.
Right. Before the AI-driven apocalypse, people should read Kitchen Confidential. It's absolutely terrific memoir written by just a phenomenal human being.
I was going to say, we introduced him as a celebrity chef and we introduced him as a TV host, but Anthony Bourdain is a cultural...
Right, doesn't do him justice in a lot of ways.
No, not at all. He's an author, a cultural commentator, and somebody who thought so deeply about the world around us, not just here in this country, but abroad. And he's so greatly missed, and I think that is, again, something that this story emphasizes. I mean, it's just a big hole in our popular culture for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we will be back with more Rising after this.